everyone, my name is Daisy Ryan and I'm a member of the Kerferd Oration Committee. On behalf of the committee, I would like to welcome you to the 18th Annual George Briscoe Kerferd Oration. May we together acknowledge the traditional custodians and First Nations people of Australia, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging and recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We would also like to welcome and acknowledge our sponsors joining us from their homes today, representatives from La Trobe University, Indigo Shire, WAW Credit Union and Quercus Beechworth. We would also like to welcome from their homes the descendants of George Briscoe Kerferd, for whom this oration is named. We would like to warmly welcome everyone joining us today, wherever you may be. The Kerferd Oration has always challenged our collective thinking about issues in our community, and the orators are always thinking about ways in which we can make a difference here in Beechworth and beyond. Before I introduce our orator, please note that we'll have our usual audience question session following today's oration. You can send us a question at any time during the oration by commenting on the YouTube channel or via text to 0490 013 921. That's 0490 013 921. Please add your first name and your location when you're sending a question. In one of the most challenging periods many of us have faced in our lifetimes, we've all needed to carefully reevaluate how we live, study, work, travel, and support each other in ways in which most of us could not have imagined a year ago. And during this time, Quercus Beechworth and the Kerferd Oration Committee have engaged a project officer to work closely with the younger community members across Indigo Shire to identify ways in which to increase the involvement of young people in our community, recognising that around 1/3 of all people in Indigo Shire are aged under 30. We'd like to specifically acknowledge the wonderful work done by Susan Reid, the project lead, in delivering this project at a time where communication and community engagement has been challenging. Our 2020 orator, Cathy McGowan AO, is well known to many of you. Cathy is a past Kerferd orator, having delivered the oration in 2006, the year I was born. In 2006, Cathy shared her vision for creating an environment in which rural Australia would enable us to contribute to our communities in vibrant, caring and personally rewarding ways, using Beechworth as a model. Cathy was the independent federal member for Indi from 2013 to 2019 and has a long and distinguished career as an academic, farmer and rural consultant. Cathy has extensive knowledge of the issues facing women in agriculture, having been a past chair of the Regional Women's Advisory Council and a past president of Australian Women in Agriculture. She was the recipient of a centenary medal in 2001 and in 2004 was made an Officer of the Order of Australia for service to the community through raising awareness and stimulating debate about issues affecting women in regional, rural and remote areas. Cathy has a Masters of Applied Science in Agriculture and Rural Development, a Bachelor of Arts degree and a Diploma of Education. She's a graduate of the Australian Rural Leadership Program, a Churchill Fellow and is a Vice-Chancellor Fellow at La Trobe University. Cathy's work has always focused on planning, networking and collaborating. In the midst of one of our most challenging periods as a community, she today invites us to consider the Australia we want. Please welcome Cathy McGowan to deliver the 18th Annual George Briscoe Kerferd Oration.
It was Mahatma Gandhi who said the future depends on what we do in the present. Good morning and welcome to this Kerferd Oration, the Australia we want, where I will share with you a view for our future and outline how, by working now in the present, we can build the foundations for the future. And in summary, my message is this: COVID-19 pandemic is being destructive of our economy and in many cases our way of life. And it has been distressing and devastating in so many ways. Yet the disruption it is creating can also be an opportunity. And I ask if there was one thing, if we did really well, would make a significant difference to our future. I believe that one thing would be to pay attention to the views and voices of the young adults in our community. And today I will lay out my reasoning for that. I'll refer to the 2006 oration and lessons learned during and following the third Kerferd Oration, including being in politics. I'll talk about the present and the Kerferd consultation and conversations which took place earlier this year. And I will conclude with some ideas for actions and practical ways to encourage a diversity of viewpoints as we make our way into that future. So it was 14 years ago that I stood at this lectern, nervous and also honoured. And I was the first local to deliver the Kerferd Oration, and it was a great privilege. And I so wanted to prove that I was up to the challenge, and particularly to impress Joan Sims, OAM, who was the initiator of the oration. And that oration, Our Commonwealth, reflected the results of a series of facilitated community conversations based around 4 questions. What is Beechworth's gift to you? What do you value about living here? What are the issues for Beechworth? And what do you hope for the future? And in preparation for today, when I reread my notes, I see there's a quote there from Don Chambers, an Indigo Shire councillor from Rutherglen. And it helps set the scene. And famously, that quote later found its way to the toilet door at Mittagundy Outdoor Education Centre and eventually into Parliament's Hansard. The future is not some place we are going to. It's one we are creating. The paths to it are not found but made, and the making of those pathways fundamentally changes both the maker and the destination. And at a personal level, that quote, the 2006 speech, the research, the dinners, had a pivotal impact on the course of my life. And certainly I grew in confidence, but I also grew in humility as I met many other locals, and I needed to reassess my attitude to this town and our community. Let me explain. I went to school in Beechworth, growing up 20 kilometres away in the Indigo Valley, where my parents were dairy farmers. And for me, during the 50s and 60s, Beechworth was a scary place. First, there were the really bad vibes of being a Catholic and the fights with the Protestants, and that took some management. Then there was the prison, where the occasional convict escaped, and the news went out, "Be careful, escaped convict on the run," and a police block on the Wurrigi Road stopping the school bus. Mum and Dad taking the keys out of the car and locking the house, a highly unusual behaviour. And always in the background, there was the Mayday Hills Asylum on the hill, and the stories told to us little kids by the children of the workers, often terrifying. However, that changed during the 2006 Kerferd conversations. I saw Beechworth with new eyes and liked what I saw. Clearly, Beechworth had changed since when I was growing up. And while all was not well, the economic and social base of the community had diversified. Mayday Hills had closed. There was a new prison. There was an active arts council. Entrepreneurs such as the Lucas family manufacturing portable sawmills and the O'Toole's with the bakery were attracting new people to the community. And it wasn't only Beechworth. Across the Shire, things were also changing. In 2012, the Indigo Shire released its optimistic and creative 2030 plan for a united, thriving and admired community, a great place to live, work and visit. And based around 6 principles, which I think hold true today: a clear vision for the people, our place, our spirit, getting about, getting value for money, and a new idea at that time, we called it the Indigo Style. And this overall plan in later years was complemented by plans for Rutherglen, Yakandanda and Chiltern. And today we see the results of that planning. And as I continued my personal journey of community engagement, inspired by the idea of a facilitated conversation with purpose around meals, in kitchens, in workplaces, I also recognised the important role of our regional and rural communities within the fabric of our nation. Our Commonwealth was more than what the cities produced or had to offer. More and more, I could see our regions held answers to the major national issues we were facing. Climate change. Well, clearly produce renewable energy in the regions. Overpopulated cities. Clearly grow our regional cities. And it was the potential of this, as well as the lack of action on these issues, that was one of the factors that eventually drew me into politics. And during those political years of 2012 to 2019, I truly and deeply came to understand the skills, experience and capacity of our young adults and what we were missing when they are not active participants in our democracy. This first became obvious in 2012. It was the Indigo's young people who tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Kathy, someone needs to do something, and we think it's you." This led eventually to the formation of Voices for Indi and my eventual decision to stand as an independent. But it was during the campaign that I first had that inkling that I may be the problem. It came to a head over the use of social media, and in particular, Twitter. One of the young team rang me. "Hi, Kathy. We haven't had a Twitter post for a few days. How are you going?" Me, "Don't worry, I'm onto it." The young person, "But when?" Me, "Tomorrow. It takes me a really long time to draft a Twitter." And I could sense the eye rolling backwards in their head as they responded, "Hey, it's only 280 characters." I almost cried with frustration. For me, doing a Twitter post was a major challenge. And it was then that I decided to let go. Said lightly, in fact, but it was big. I handed over control of the Twitter account, delegated the drafting of the social media, and moved to a place of trust. Clearly, I wasn't coping. And a shaft of light penetrated my stressed brain. These are digital natives. They know the territory. I was a foreigner and could hardly speak the language. They wanted to win the campaign. They wanted action on climate change, on the trains, on mobile phone towers, maybe more than I did. And why wouldn't I trust them with the Twitter feed? It was a turning point in the campaign. And then when the final vote was counted, with 439 votes the difference, I believe it was the use of social media that made the critical difference and the vote of those young adults. And this lesson stayed with me all the time I was a Member of Parliament. And I continually asked, where are the young people? What are they saying? What are they doing? What are they thinking? And how can I support them in their issues, in their careers, in their lives? And when I asked, they responded. And for example, in my final year as a Member of Parliament, over 200 young people in Indi provided valuable input to the Indi survey into the federal budget. So I hope this background sets the scene for the next section of my talk, the present. In discussion with the Kerferd Committee about the 2020 oration, there was strong support to focus on young adults' perspective of the future. Similar in a way to 2006, we planned to revisit the kitchen table conversations, but with COVID it wasn't possible and we switched to Zoom. And I probably should confess that in April this year I had never used Zoom, revisit 2012. And I am grateful to Jill Briggs, who's with us today. Jill's from Rutherglen, Noorong actually, for mentoring me, the advisory committee and the project lead, Sue Reid, on how to use Zoom. And over 100 people participated in the survey and online meetings. And we've got a copy of the report and it's on the webpage. And I encourage you to download it at the end of the talk. But just for now, a few highlights. The key outcome from the discussion indicates that there are young adults in our community who are ready to lead, who have the knowledge and insight to be taken seriously. There are young adults in the Indigo Shire who want to connect with others and take actions on issues big and small that are important to them. And the major issues they nominated were health and well-being, climate change, the environment and education. These young adults love the towns of Indigo Shire and think it's a great place to live. And they noted that the COVID-19 restrictions have been easier to endure in the country, where remote work and study have been possible. There is a strong pullback to the region, as these young people had to leave for study or work, and resolving problems such as lack of public transport, unreliable internet, would make it much easier for them to return home. And when asked about COVID, these young adults reminded us that it is them in our communities who will be living with the consequences of decisions made now, and they also will be our leaders in the future. Our young adults expressed a really strong desire and a sense of belonging, especially when their families lived in Indigo and they had grown up or gone to school here. However, if they went away, it was the coming home that was often difficult. Not always, but often. Their friends had moved on, and often they had moved on, new jobs in their lives and in their sense of purpose. And it was hard to reconnect. And also for newcomers to the Shire, they described how challenging it was to find a way into new networks, to meet others with similar interests, and to make a meaningful connection to our community. So to build the Australia we want, it came clear through this consultation that we don't have to start from scratch, and also it's not rocket science. So with deep appreciation to all those who took part in that project, and the report outlines many, many suggestions, some of which I'll come to in the final section, I want to just pick up a few examples of what we learnt about that's working. The young adults told us that mentoring, creating meaningful work, making connections, belonging works. Jobs work, art works, locally available and relevant education works, music works, sports works, agriculture works, opportunities for leadership works. And they were clear: connections, including and belonging works. And there were so many examples where leadership and engagement is happening locally. The Deputy Mayor of Indigo Shire, how proud we are of Sophie Price. Daisy Ryan on the Kerferd Committee. Jackie Hawkins running as an independent in the last state election. And there are many examples of organisations and groups that are really delivering. Murray Arts, for example, is creating meaningful, relevant work. And a spotlight on Bethany Thornber, who lives in Waganya, is an emerging artist and the inaugural curator at the Burraja Gallery, the only dedicated Aboriginal art gallery in the Border region. And as she says, as a young Wiradjuri woman and emerging curator, I have valued the opportunity to help grow the gallery and build a platform which gives voice to our local Aboriginal community. How proud we must be. The Australian Centre for Rural Entrepreneurship, ACRE, located in the old jail, targets and makes programs specifically designed for schools and encourages young adults to create a job rather than take a job. The Kerferd and Quercus committees, a special call-out. As well as appointing young people to their boards, they particularly supported this oration and worked with young adults to have their views heard and followed up with much deeper conversations. Yakandanda Folk Festival provides a dedicated platform and space for many young and emerging musicians to build a reputation and an audience. The North East Learning Network, NELLN, links projects and schools right across the region. The Ovens and Murray Advertiser, it's our local voice, tells the stories and particularly profiles our young adults. Sports. The Emma George Sports Scholarship provides financial support to talented young athletes. The Rainbow Ball, organised by the North East Pride Collective, ran the debutante ball last year, and they organised free transport, which made the difference. And not to forget, the Indigo Shire Council has a dedicated youth worker, strategic plans, and they support so many activities, including Young Citizen of the Year and the Youth Politics Camp. And it's a matter of great pride to me that many of the local governments in the northeast of Victoria are attracting young adults onto council. But our Indigo young adults say they want more inclusion, more opportunities to connect, and more opportunities to be leaders. So before I outline my ideas and what we learned about what works, let me answer the obvious question: why would we bother? Why would we do the work, make the effort to change the way we currently do things? Well, first, because we can, because we should, because our young adults are asking us, because they want it, because they know things that those of us over 40 or 35 don't know, because they can use computers, mobile phone apps, they can create code, and they know about TikTok. Because they know about working by distance, and Zooming is their second language. Because it's in our own best interests. And because the consequences of not acting to include young adults as leaders will have significant negative economic and social consequences. And finally, why we really should make the difference and make the effort is because it is their future. And I don't agree with the Prime Minister, Mr Scott Morrison, when he talks about snapping back. I don't want to go back to where we were before COVID. Truly, I want to move forward to a new destination. And as Gandhi said, the future depends on what we do now, today. And today we have that opportunity to move forward with care, with clarity, with purpose, and with intention. Imagine if we could make decisions now that would create a community where our young adults truly know that they are wanted, that they belong, that their contributions are welcomed and encouraged, that their creativity and innovation is celebrated, their leadership is supported by mentoring, encouragement and opportunities. Imagine if the Indigo Shire was known as a place where there are lots of, and there are, creative, talented, interesting, fun young adults, all connected and supporting each other and us, the oldies, in our interests, hobbies and community groups. What a vibe that would create. Imagine if many, many more of our young adults chose to live in the Indigo Shire instead of the overcrowded cities. And they chose to live here because we offered more of what they wanted and needed. We offered them the jobs, the education, the services, the opportunities to be involved in taking actions on the issues that are important to them, such as climate change. Imagine if the many young adults who came home during COVID-19 lockdown decided to stay. Imagine if we had more capable, resourceful, skilled regional young adults on all our councils, in the state government and in the federal parliament. Oh, if only. So the Australia I want is one where young people choose to live in regional areas because it's beautiful. They told us this, where there are jobs, educational and recreational opportunities. They told us this, where they belong. They told us this. And during this time of COVID, I believe there are opportunities for all of us as individuals and as members of community groups, as a region, state and nation, to reach out and to take action to renew our communities and rebuild our economy. So what can we do? For me, the destination is really clear. A prosperous, caring Australia, alive with opportunities for everyone, where the regions and Indigo Shire's 15 communities are buzzing with jobs, with relevant education and all the necessary services. There's great food, locally grown and locally available, entertainment, including top-notch sporting facilities, lots of music, arts festivals, opportunity to make a job through innovation and entrepreneurship. They abound everywhere, where we've got vibrant communities who truly care for each other. So what would it take to ask our young people to come home, to say we want them to come with their friends and their families to live in the Indigo Shire? What would it take to incorporate this as a principle in our strategic planning? What would it take to incorporate this as a principle in all our plans? By local government, by Quercus, by the Kerferd Committee, by the hospital, by La Trobe, by WAW. What would it take? It will take intention, it takes commitment, it takes dedication, and it will take resources. But most of all, it will need champions. It will take physical infrastructure, certainly, effective public transport, strong internet, mobile phone connectivity, and jobs. It will take social infrastructure, groups and activities that are inclusive, encouraging and open, with clear intention, commitment and resources. But what else will it take? It will take us to ask. It will take us to care. It will take us to facilitate. It will take us to put up our hands. It will take us to make the time. And it will take us to release the resources. So what to do? On this journey to the desirable future, and on the assumption that you agree with my proposition that young adults are the key, they can't do it alone. To get to this destination, it's going to need all of us to buck in, to lend a hand, to turn up, speak up, step up. And for some of us, to move over to the passenger seat for a while and encourage a young adult to get behind the wheel. And for all of us over 40, we have lived experience of being a young adult. So my first piece of advice, pay attention to your own experience. What would you have liked? And look around. Notice young adults, your nieces and nephews, your neighbours. Acknowledge them. Say, hi, how are you going? How is COVID impacting on you, your friends? And then listen. Listen with understanding. Offer to help. Put a hand out. Tap on the shoulder. Become a mentor. And I've also heard being a mentor is known as intergenerational weaving. And there's such wisdom to be shared. And I noticed in the Ovens and Murray Advertiser, they interviewed the University of the Three Age in preparation for today. And the advice of the U3A to young people or to themselves was encourage and empower, make space for young people to voice their opinions, treat them as equals, value their concerns and facilitate their involvement in the community. And their message to young adults was, the world is run by those who turn up. We encourage you to turn up and speak up. So my challenge to U3A is, let's make that happen. Do some intergenerational weaving. The Kerferd project recommended an Indigo-wide mentoring program be established. So who might be interested in taking the lead? Leadership projects such as the Alpine Valleys Community Leadership Program encourage and support the young people you know to join the AVCLP. There are other scholarships, such as that given by the Youth Thrive program that supported Corey James Jackson from Beechworth Secondary College, last year's Year 12 student. So he was awarded the Helen McPherson Smith Rural Scholarship that enables him to go to university. So encourage young adults to apply for scholarships. There are many of them around. And I noticed the ABC have their Trailblazer program, which closes next week, to introduce young adults to multimedia skills and reporting. But what would it take to have an Indigo-specific leadership program where young adults are able to connect, learn skills, network, and be mentored into positions on community committees, hospital boards, and encouraged to stand for local government? Note, election in October. What we know works is when organisations become aware, when somebody begins to pay attention and asks, how many young adults are involved and doing what and why not? Where there's a local champion. Then that local champion meets with and talks to other young adults about what would work. So they develop a strategy. They set a target, a goal. And one is not enough. One young adult on a committee is lonely. Two's better, three's wonderful. And then that champion pays attention to the newspapers and says, oh, there's some grant programs around. Maybe we could get some funding. Or there's philanthropy, such as Into Our Hands Foundation. And then after the program is developed, we have the reporting through the newspapers, and then finally we have the celebration that we've achieved our goal, short-term, medium and long-term. The Kerferd project recommended that we establish a kit called Young People in the Lead for the use of organisations who are looking for ideas on how to increase their engagement with young adults. Where is the funding? And how do we go about it without being patronising? So support and encouragement to young adults is also needed to form specific groups and create spaces where their interests can be met. When they can connect, they can network, and when we go looking for them, we can find them. Indigo Shire has recently declared a climate emergency, and given the strong interest in our young people in this topic, surely there's an opportunity to work with this cohort on ideas and strategies. But there are also opportunities in the arts, in agriculture, in education, in health and in commerce. And clearly it's not all one way. My experience in 2012, it was the young adults who were bold, brave, and they built a bridge. They tapped me on the shoulder, and then they continued to turn up, speak up, and take leadership roles. And so to the young adults listening today, we ask for your tolerance and patience. Please know that our intentions are honourable, but sadly we don't always get it right. And the truth of the words from the U3A, the world is run by those who turn up, and we encourage you to turn up and to speak up. And to my conclusion, COVID has created great disruption, but also a great opportunity. COVID can give us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do leadership differently. We are not powerless, and we are not victims. And there will be an end to this particular journey. And as you leave today, can I ask you to do one thing? Begin with a conversation. Hello, how are you? How's your experience of COVID? And then let us all make a commitment to be open to new ideas, to new ways of working, to new friendships, to a new economy and a renewed community which is empowered by the energy of our young adults. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I think that's given us all a lot to think about. We'll now have some time for questions. Just a quick reminder, questions can be posted to our YouTube channel or via text to 0490 013 921. That is 0490 013 921. Please make sure you add your first name and your location when you send in a question. So, our first question is from Paul in Beechworth. How do we encourage older people to let go, drop their bias, and give younger people a go?
How do we encourage older people to drop their biases and let go? So it has to be a conversation, doesn't it? But what I really know that works is when an organisation does it. So an organisation such as Quercus have got young people on their board, and then the experience ripples out because the older adults can actually get a sense, because maybe they don't know young adults, maybe they've never worked with them. So getting young adults into those somebody being the champion to get those young adults into the community positions and mentoring and supporting them and not leaving them alone builds that bubble. But I also think strategy is really important. So putting it into our strategic plan that over the next 5 years, we want to change the age profile of our governing body. And once you put that into your plan, then the committee talks about how are we going to do it. But one of the things we learned as we were doing this consultation with young adults is there's a real disconnect when you're patronising. When you go and we want a young adult on our board, would you be it? And it feels like it's tokenism. It's not coming from a place of genuine renewal. So the committee itself and the individuals themselves have to do some mental changing in their heads to say, what Cathy McGowan said today is right. I had to change my viewpoint. I had to see the world differently. But I really think the compelling argument is about the digital natives and that generational difference between how I and people over 40 were born up and those now coming through. And I just want to tell one story that might help with this. On Friday night, I was invited to be on The Drum, which is the ABC discussion program. And as part of that, I met a young man in the Wodonga studios called Jackson. Jackson's 27 and is what's called a multimedia journalist. And we were talking about the day and the problems with the cross-border issue that we've got and the medical issues. And he explained to me how that day he and his team at Wodonga had made a news clip, video, sound, and interviewed people that was then played on the 7 o'clock ABC State News, explaining what had happened to that mother with the baby that got stuck in the queue. And it's just hit me so clearly that my generation are not multimedia journalists, and I couldn't have done that. So we really need the skills and the expertise of the generation coming up if we're going to tell our stories and if we are going to let the rest of the world know about what's happening here in Albury-Wodonga. Like an old-fashioned journalist wouldn't have cut it. So the answer to the question in summary is committees need to do things, we need to build it into our strategic plan, and then we need to have opportunities where that intergenerational weaving happens and we meet that younger generation and go, oh my God, you're so clever, you know stuff that I don't know, will you come on my team?
Our next question is from Karen, also from Beechworth, and it is, what advice do you have for any young person interested in standing in the coming elections for local government?
So anybody, get in touch with Sophie Price, who's already a councillor, and have a conversation with her. She is the first start, but also previous to today, talking to Jenny O'Connor, who's our mayor. Jenny's also expressed an interest in mentoring and supporting young people into politics. And with a bit of organisation, we could have we will have a preliminary training program for potential councillors before October. That's part of the new rules in Victoria. So what I'd be saying is to young adults who are interested in being on local government to come along to that session. Talk to me, talk to Jenny, talk to Sophie, and we'll help you through it. Run a ticket. Don't just be one person running by yourself. Get 3 or 4 young people who care about climate change, who care about mental health, who care about public transport. Someone from Beechworth, someone from Yak, someone from Rutherglen, and run a ticket. And then people like me, very happy to talk to you about how to get a campaign up and running. So I'm open. I know Sophie is and I know Jenny is as well.
And for our last question, we have from Ross, also in Beechworth, is economic outcomes is the focus of our national leaders. This is not a focus provided by the report forum, the young people. How can we support their voice?
I don't know the answer to change this particular government at the moment, but longer term I do. We've got to have more younger voices in Parliament. And if I learnt anything as an independent, it was what a difference being inside Parliament can make. So if we are over the future, we absolutely must make sure that people like Jackie Hawkins get elected, that people like Sophie is supported in her role in local government. And then when we've got an opportunity to support younger adults at the federal level, we do so. But I think it's a longer term plan, and I can see it happening maybe eventually when Helen Haines is ready to hand over her position. If we had 3 or 4 young adults who have come through local council, who understand the politics of it, I'm sure the people of Indi would get behind them and support them as a federal representative. But they're currently not there, and they're certainly not there on the coalition side of politics. So it's such a gap. And consequently, when government makes its decision, it doesn't do it from the perspective of young voices. It does it from the perspective of mostly older men. And we've got a long way to go before we've got a better understanding there.
We would again like to thank those members of the Kerferd family who are joining us to watch the oration today via our live stream. The George Briscoe Kerferd Medal was crafted by George Frimmel of Melbourne and has an image adapted from an 1870 print from the Burke Museum collection. At this point, we would normally ask one of the family members to present the medal to our orator. However, on this occasion, we have the following message from Amy Kirkwood, the great-great-granddaughter of George Briscoe Kerferd, on behalf of the family.
Many thanks, Daisy, for the introduction. As Daisy has mentioned, my name is Amy Kirkwood and I am the great-great-granddaughter of George Briscoe Kerferd. And today I represent the descendants of George Briscoe Kerferd, and it gives me great honour to thank Cathy McGowan for her fascinating oration. And unfortunately, I can't be there in person to pass on the medallion, but we are really grateful for her considered thoughts. And it's a very timely topic for this moment that we are all experiencing. I am sure that George Briscoe Kerferd would be watching on in horror and awe at the moment. And I think he would be echoing Cathy's sentiments that this is really an opportunity for young people to step up and take the lead for this country. George Briscoe himself, at the age of 26, entered into local government, and by 33 he was at state government. So he himself was a young leader and an entrepreneur and someone who had a great gusto for change. And it feels like that is the time right now. We are in a moment of change, but it's also, as Cathy has mentioned, a moment of opportunity and a moment to reflect on what type of Australia we want. And I hope, and I'm sure my other descendants hope, that this is an opportunity to really seize the day for young people, to allow young people to step up and to really change the way that we live and run this country. It's an opportunity for rural and regional centres to start to build and grow as young people can return with a more digital environment. And it's an opportunity to look at the way that we look after our most vulnerable. So thank you again, Cathy. Fascinating insights. And hopefully we will be back there next year for next year's oration. And we are very pleased to have this continue to run, and it's with great pride that all the descendants watch today. So many thanks to the organisers and best wishes for all of you. Please keep safe and we will see you next year. Bye.
Thank you, Amy. On behalf of the Kerferd family, I'm honoured to present this medal to Cathy as the 18th Kerferd Orator.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And keeping our social distance, but in closing, could we have a round of applause for our fantastic Daisy and the work she's done today? Oh!
The Honour Board shows the eminent speakers since 2003. Today we again add the name Cathy McGowan. I would like to thank all the people involved in the creation of this year's oration. Their names are listed on our website. We also thank the George Kerferd Hotel, who so generously support the Kerferd Oration. Kerferd Oration Committee is interested in your thoughts about the oration, and we would encourage you to complete the feedback form, which is available on our website. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll all meet in person next year for the 2021 Kerferd Oration.